Another question from the audience? John's hand was in the back.
We've all seen, maybe you saw the news article, news magazine article that was on, I think it was on 60 Minutes or one of the news magazines last week about the trend of people going into Best Buy stores and using QR readers to scan the device to experience the product and then go off and buy it online and not buy it at Best Buy. You've all seen probably in your local neighborhood border bookstores go away. And as one who desperately loves walking through bookstores and libraries, for those that are left, I'm wondering if the panel can react to the concept of the campus bookstore. Have you gotten any pushback as you've moved toward digital from the campus bookstore? On a lot of campuses, it's an auxiliary and contributes money to the operation of the campus. Have you considered a new role or evolving role of the bookstore? I wonder if you had any thoughts to share on that.
Yeah, or it's a profit center, or there are contractual agreements with people.
I'm not educated on this, but there was a great New Yorker cover, I don't know, sometime in the last couple months, of a bookstore, and there was one lone book on a shelf, and there was all sorts of other gewgaws in the store. And I think that at least the campus bookstores I'm familiar with, they tend to have a lot of other stuff other than books in them, and maybe that's where they're going.
I'm also not educated enough to say anything about this, but I will anyway. I think that in terms of physical print, I think the bookstores still have an opportunity. And as we go to a print-on-demand model let me put it this way: as the default shifts, and we're seeing it start to, as the default shifts to digital, and those hangers-on like myself who really like to hold the thing in my hand and flip through the pages, as those people become the minority, they need some place to go to get their print copies. I need some place to go. And so having bookstores, I think bookstores would do well to look at sophisticated, well-developed print-on-demand options because those, I think, will still be important. And if you're already located in the right place, then you've taken care of the distribution problem.
I have an 11-year-old son. I won a Nook over Christmas in a raffle, and I gave it to my son. And now, he won't read the paper books that we give him. Like, no, if it's not on the Nook, I'm not interested in it. What? And by the time, as you were saying, by the time he gets to college, what are his expectations going to be? So I think the idea of what is a bookstore is sort of a legitimate question. I do know that there are contractual agreements, though, that universities and colleges have with Follett's and with Barnes & Noble and others, and I wonder how this will change the nature of some of those relationships. That's just a statement. We'll go in the middle.
Hello, my name's Nadine Dexter. I'm the director of the medical library at a brand new medical school here at UCF, College of Medicine. I've been enjoying the conversation. I'm learning a lot. One of the things I'm disappointed about is no library voice. There's no library person on the panel or to discuss from a librarian's point of view how we could be a partner with you. I'm actually responsible for creating a 100% electronic library that integrates the course content, and I work very closely with a lot of my vendors, a lot of my faculty, and my students. And so one of my comments is, next time you do this, please invite a librarian. I'd like to offer myself. And the other thing I'd like to ask about is consortial buying. I am actually participating in the state of Florida with the other medical libraries in consortial buying for our schools and actually saving significantly. But I haven't really heard a whole lot about consortial buying among other colleges or other states. Has that been something you've talked about or thought about?
Maybe I could take a shot at that. So I work for OhioLink, which is a state consortium of 99 libraries in Ohio. And the three sets of comments I would make are, as I tried to say earlier on, I think the librarian's role has been conflicted by its preference to work on serving the research needs of its faculty as distinct from this big fat center part called textbooks. And I'd like the librarians to step forward, and half of them in Ohio have, the other half are pursuing the research agenda, to talk about ways that they can curate, negotiate the licenses for, and manage through a patron acquisition model, that would be an ideal and wonderful thing to do. The related thing that exists in the state of Ohio and perhaps here in Florida as well, because we have these 88 libraries which are interconnected, and because that there are already authentication authorization process in place for the conduct of legal access to resources, that's the point where you do security and where you do identification management. The comment about 60% of the costs are associated with, and help desk problems are about who can legally use this. That's what a centralized library role can do. So come on, we need you, and go for it. That's a really important thing to do.
I'll just add an amen. Let's get the librarians in the pool with us here on working on this, and we talk to our librarians a lot. On the consortial aspect, though, I think it's very, very, very important. We learned a hell of a lot from November 1st to about January 10th when the Bloomington Provost shared what we were doing with the e-text to the Big Ten provosts. And they said, hey, how could we get involved with that? And one conversation led to another. And it's like, well, you know, you're going to get involved in August of next year? You know, there's a lot happening. And very quickly, we were able to put together a pilot offering a Jumpstart trial pack, 10 sections of e-texts, a platform, rolled out. Provost subsidized the pilot, so it wasn't even a charge to students to how to fight billing and all of that stuff. But if every institution had to separately go and negotiate with, you know, McGraw jumped in and Corso jumped in that particular very quick offering, it would have never happened. But because Internet 2 was the contracting agent, a consortial buyer, and it may be state associations, it may be a club like the Big Ten, it may be whatever, but a club that comes together and does the buying and executes the contract and makes it agreeable across its members to move swiftly, I think it's very important. Because, I mean, you know, with the table that was here just before, the contracting cost of arguing over commas and semicolons and, well, you're 31.5%, oh, I'm 38%, you know, I mean, whatever, you know, 52 and 12, you know, there's just a lot of that makes no sense. So if we can aggregate demand and let these guys aggregate sell to us, I think it makes a lot of sense, particularly in the near-term game.
We'll go all the way in the back, whose hand was up earlier.
I have a question, and there are people that answer this question. And sustainability issue. Our students need to buy these digital resources, and the majority of my students are financial aid students. They use their Pell Grants to buy their textbooks. They don't have the ability to save money and purchase it directly and then get the money back in Pell, and they depend upon the bookstores to run their financial aid through. And I'm just curious if any of you have come up with these against any of these issues or concerned.
Yes, Rhonda may have something too. For us, it's billed through just as their tuition. So it shows up on their bursar bill. If they've got financial aid, it's credited against that. And again, you know, our goal has always been that the net cost of ownership to students would be less than if they bought a used textbook, used it for a semester, and then hopefully succeeded in selling it back. So our financial aid folks, so far they're real happy with our approach.
I would just say ours is the same.
Well, again, our approach is we have no required device. They can use whatever they want, including we still have many public computing labs where any browser works for all of this. We're at 99% PC or Mac ownership already. We're not that high on tablet ownership, but as that continues to be commoditized as a consumer device, I think that will come. We have been asked if we might negotiate more favorable buying terms for some of the tablets and such, but at present the pace of innovation in the industry makes that a little bit difficult to really beat what the Best Buy special offers are going to be.
Two quick comments. First, a lot of our publishing partners have gone to 2 weeks free access, which is very helpful for students that are trying to get, who need to wait for that financial aid money to come in to buy, so they can drop out. That's a good thing. The other thing is that there are places in which that reading device is part of a financial aid package. So the trick is to bundle the content onto the platform if that's what you're after, and you can probably come out okay on the deal.
We'll go in the middle, and then we'll go over to the side.
Just to come back to the bookstore issue and the financial aid issue for a second, we believe that the bookstore is an important player in this, particularly from an enabler perspective, and particularly in the student choice model, when the student is actually making a choice to buy one format or another, be it print, rental, or digital. We actually took the approach of integrating with college bookstore point-of-sale systems. So right now, over 1,000 college bookstores actually sell our inventory. So the student is able to use their financial aid in the college bookstore. They're able to make a decision about what format they want to use, and then they are able to exchange their format on our platform. So I do think it gets back to what Steve mentioned just a moment ago, that the bookstore can be an enabler from an administrative perspective, particularly when you're in a choice model.
Okay, I'm going to preface this too by saying I don't expect there to be a great answer for it right now, but one of the best comments I've heard all day is not giving two adjacent steps in your supply chain to the same person. And as I hear people suggesting that the end-all be-all is using the LMS and leveraging that to deliver digital content that we're purchasing or the students are purchasing from a publisher. When it comes time, which the time has come for our institution, to make another decision on something like a course management system or maybe the student information system or something else, if I've fully integrated the college's textbook process into that system, I've now limited my choice down the road of what I'm going to do for that other system like the LMS. And that's a scary thought for me.
I'll start with a comment. I think this is true for both for Sean and Mickey. Your platform's offerings for how e-text can connect up with the range of learning management systems out there, whether it's Moodle or Desire to Learn or Sakai or Blackboard or whatever.
In my experience, it's a range, but not all. And even we're on Angel now, which is
Blackboard.
not by far, it's by far not the smallest course management system out there. And I still have trouble getting publisher content from major publishers to function within our course management system. So the thought of making an institutional decision that all of the textbook content might be through any course management system.
So a couple things, I'll just talk about the approach and strategy we had in negotiating and thinking about this stuff for us. I think we've got each of those pieces very independent. We have a license deal with the publishers to have access to content for a specified period of time till a student graduates and such. At present, our deal is with a platform provider, CourseLoad, which provides the annotation tools and a lot of those things, and the students get to it through our learning management system, which is principally Sakai. I could change Sakai, I could change my platform provider, and I still have multi-year access to that content based on the agreements I have with the publishers. So we've tried to keep those three things separate to not get into too much of a bundled situation. It is likely, in my judgment, over some period of time, that a bundled offering may be more efficient. We may just not quite be there yet. That's my crystal ball.
And I would just add that from a technical perspective, if you stay standards compliant, all of that is very possible. And we're in the same situation with our entire system of colleges using Angel and making sure that we are, whatever the next LMS is compliant with the LTI and technically able to be sort of plug and play, then it does everything Brad's talking about. You preserve that that ability to move to something else, and you're not tied in because only one thing works.
And the majority of the content learning management, the course and learning management systems will evolve in that direction, or they will have lost their hold on the market. It's beginning to erode at this point. So yes, it's critical to keep the content independent of the delivery mechanism. My personal position is that if I were investing at the level of a large entity, it would be for content management distribution independent of delivery mechanism. And that's the importance of the standards. And the challenge you may be having is that common cartridge, one of the common ones, really is not that common across the different iterations of the LMS. And Brad's selling shares in Facebook because he agrees.
I said you can buy some shares in a month.
I agree with what's been said so far on the panel. The only thing that I would add is that after going through 2 major migrations, from all of our colleges being on different learning management systems to all being on Vista and now being on D2L, we've made a concerted effort to keep that separation, but in spite of those efforts, it is not an easy process to do a major migration. It takes an immense amount of time on the part of faculty, on the part of instructional designers, especially when you have thousands upon thousands of courses and sections and over 160,000 students.
My question is, how difficult is it to get faculty to come to an accord? And now, what I mean is, I come from Miami-Dade College, and we have a unionized faculty, and it's very large. And sometimes agreeing in something unison is very hard. So I was wondering, you can tell, and everybody in this room, you know, it's hopefully going into that next step, but everybody that's not in this room is probably, and then we talk about the student's age, and I'm not saying age, but all ways of doing stuff, sometimes convincing faculty that, you know, going into this, and then you add in, you had to train faculty to use the LMS, then you had to train faculty to use the ebook, then you had to train faculty and some of the great things. I'm computer science, so I'm loving this, but the ones that are not so technical, you know, yeah, sure, the chart and how many bookmark, the book and all that stuff, it is great stuff for me, but in your experience, how hard has it been to transition this into an entire group of faculty and saying, this is the way that we're doing it, you have to buy into it, you're gonna have to use it, but they can use the bare minimum just as our students do. They can just say, okay, this is the book, but I'm not using annotations or highlighting. I'm not putting notes or stuff like that. You know, just that's the book. So you can tell me a little bit about that experience. I have another question, but I'll follow up on that.
Well, I'll comment on ours. Steve and I first met, one of my roles was Associate Dean for Teaching and Learning Information Technology across all campuses, and we went through the big change with the LMS and all the challenges of that and such. But one of the things that I had long learned even before I got into that role, the best influencers with faculty are their peers. Their peers, you know, they look across the hall and say, gosh, if Bob can do it, gee, can't be too hard. So that helps a lot. And the other thing are the students. When the students complain to me, like, why don't you make the faculty use the LMS in sensible ways? And I said, well, why don't you tell them? So we produced a video of the president of the Student Government Association doing a Letterman top 10 countdown of kind of the ridiculous things that faculty did with it. Put it on the front page of the learning management system, and I found it was immensely helpful in doing that. So I think there are approaches that are effective with faculty. Sending a memo or an order rarely is helpful, at least in our culture.
And so I use work in this LMS transfer and also the e-text. Great stuff. I mean, they know how to make these changes happen with their faculty culture. Our most successful experiences occur when we can change a department at a time instead of an individual innovator within a department. That can polarize things as much as help things. So if you have limited resources to invest, if you're able to bring more than many of a computer science department at a particular institution forward, that's the most successful. And the second thing we did when we introduced LMS a long time ago at Ohio State, we started with the big freshman classes so that we'd have an army of people saying, as sophomores, why aren't you using the LMS? As juniors saying, why aren't you using the LMS? And that was the other thing that was sort of helpful in that regard.
Is anybody else here using course signals or something like that on your campus? We're rolling out course signals this spring with a couple of pilot institutions, and we'll have all 13 colleges up by fall, supposedly. This is going to drive a lot of change, I think, in how faculty use the LMS. At a minimum, they're going to have to put some information in the LMS, some type of assessment of student learning throughout the semester, regardless of whether they're teaching online or not. It's going to be a major training and information awareness raising effort.
Question over there.
My name is Brian Jacobs. I'm the founder and president of a company called Academos, and we provide outsourced online bookstores to about 100 schools around the country. I've seen a lot of the disruption that's occurred in the textbook market over the last several years. There seems to be, I'm hearing an implicit assumption in that regard, that you're seeing sort of bookstores and wholesalers consolidate or close up. What I'm hearing is that the publishers still have, they're still part of the future for long-term solutions. And so I guess my question is, how confident are you really that they are long-term, part of the long-term solution? Consider that the car makers, were not previously horse and buggy makers. The digital music did not come from the music industry, right? So there seems to be, nevertheless, this assumption that the very sort of legacy businesses today, with regard to educational content, can actually help us get to the next phase. And maybe that's a mistaken assumption.
I'll just jump in for a sec and say I think that in terms of the flat content, the basic content, I don't expect that. I don't expect that there will be a lot for publishers to do there for very much longer. But I think that where publishers have the resources to really go deeper into the more sophisticated learning analytics, feedback loops, the things like My Math Lab, those kinds of areas are going to be very important, I think increasingly important going forward. And so, if I had to call it, I would say that we'll see a shift towards publishers doing less of the very basic content that can be done, by that's increasingly being done, in the OER space. But the OER folks still can't do the really sophisticated. You have just a couple, the Carnegie Mellons and a couple of others that are doing these really deep learning experiences, and I would expect that opportunity would for at least for a while would really be the domain of the publishers to really excel.
Could I just make a comment? I've been following the OER movement for a long time, and also the whole scholarly publishing landscape and ecology. And I would say that the OER movement in particular has been, there's no sustainability model, period. It exists on the basis of grant funding, and that drives up, and then another series of grants need to be resourced, or now there are discussions about large infusions of money from the federal and state governments. Is that a sustainability model? I mean, I guess it depends what your predictions are. I think in the publishing industry, scholarly publishing industry, if anything, you've seen more of a, and I think Brad showed a slide to this effect. I mean, they almost have a stranglehold on the scholarly publication output and process. I would say production costs money. High production values cost a lot of money. And I'm not sure who in this landscape is going to step up, if it's not the publishers, to subsidize that high production value. And people want high production value.
I would debate one word with Diane. She said almost have a stranglehold. I'm not sure I would qualify it with almost on the
we can talk about that. I have some data.
on the scholarly journal side. The question was, how confident are we that the publishers have a role over the next, let's just say, decade? That's as long as I'm probably going to care. A decade or maybe 15 years tops. My simple answer to that is 100% confident, because what is going to be happening between now and 2020 is capital intensive. We have not yet devised means of aggregating and managing capital and paying it back amongst ourselves in the absence of a commercial entity to coordinate that for us. We've got some progress with Moodle and Sakai in learning how to do that, but that's a different animal than the complexity of what we're talking about here. So I personally, my crystal ball, I'm 100% confident.
Can I need to jump back in for one more second because I want to clarify something. So I just got an email today from folks back in Washington State, and there's a K-12 open textbooks bill going through the legislature, and it just passed Ways and Means, and it's probably going to go. And what it does is it essentially allocates funds from the normal expenditures that go into textbooks for the state of Washington, and it redirects a small percentage of that towards creating open textbooks. So there is sustainability here in the sense that we've figured out, at least for the flat content, that, gee, you know, our financial aid is paying for these publisher books, and they're kind of expensive. So if our tax dollars are already going towards this, why don't we just sort of go direct to the faculty or whatever provider is willing to, you know, to create for a one-time cost those materials, and then we'll openly license them and share them out. And California's doing the same thing. They have, you know, $25 million going through the legislature right now. Don't know if it'll happen, but you know, they're going to do. They're shooting to do that. Steinberg's looking to do the top 50 open textbooks. So in terms of open textbooks, it's happening, and that's, you know, that's a done deal. Now, is there still a place for publishers? My point was absolutely yes. I think that what we're seeing is the shift of the landscape towards these more sophisticated learning systems, and I think that that's absolutely something that it takes deep pockets to be able to finance, and so that's my 2 cents.
Tim and I spoke at break. If you've not read David Wiley's blog post called OER 2017, David Wiley is, you know, just one of the prophets out front on this at BYU. But it's an excellent post talking about how we are making great progress with OER in a number of these areas of kind of textbook substitutes, flat content, but the game is shifting, and at present we're not really pursuing those very much. David Wiley, OER 2017, great blog post.
It's from BYU. In the couple of minutes we have left, let me jump.
Since you said the question was for all panelists, could I offer a brief publisher perspective?
Sure.
Or viability?
A brief publisher perspective.
So, I may not be as confident as Brad at 100%, but I'm pretty confident, and it actually is because of the reasons you all cited. For example, the submissions for assignments and assessments on our systems increased 36% again last semester. On our busiest days, we handle over 1 million of them. So that's an indicator of the intensity of use of our what did Tom call it, flat content that we make available. We may indeed choose to continue to compete for the business that Washington State will bid out for flat content that replaces existing expensive textbooks, or we may not. But really, I jotted down what our key investments right now are in stability and performance of our technology and our system. It's our oxygen. That's what we're doing right now. It has nothing to do with creating flat content. User experience. This continues to be a major focus that we have. How we design the experience of using our learning materials. And then the third one is analytics. Digital materials allow you to do new things, and it's analytics around two things: academic performance analytics and content-centered adaptive learning efforts. That's where our big investments in. We actually do think that those will be relevant in 5 years. So we think we'll be around, but we're not 100% sure.
So I will invoke again moderator prerogative, and I'll jump in and maybe we'll kind of wrap up with sort of a summation. Earlier today, Stephen, you said something about the difference between infrastructure versus exoskeleton. And in my mind, I've always thought of the combination of those things as sort of the ecosystem that all of this lives within. And so if we look at trying to create an ecosystem of development support and delivery support of e-texts, including everything from faculty compensation, cost of updates, cost of production, some of the things, Brad, you were getting at. How do we provide time for faculty to develop? How do we count this for tenure and promotion? Brad, you said value creators must be paid. How does that figure in? So when we look at the development of an ecosystem like that, I'm going to combine two of my questions. What do you think the number one challenge is in achieving something sustainable like that, that actually has systemic impact? With the context of challenges being in the areas of technical challenges, policy challenges, communication challenges, jurisdictional challenges, some of the stuff that Rhonda, you got to about, oh, you're infringing on my sales territory, or you're taking sales away from my bookstore, accessibility challenges, all of the big gumbo of challenges that are impediments to us achieving this ecosystem of sustainability. To kind of wrap up for everybody here, what do you think the number one challenge would be from your perspective? And we'll start from Stephen and work this way.
Being overwhelmed by the challenges is the answer. Seriously, you have to have a believable vision, and you have to have leadership which will allow us to drag ourselves through all the swamp water. I mean, everything you mentioned does stand in the way of this transformation that we've been talking about. But A, it is attainable. B, it must be attained. We simply can't put this off anymore. We're all going to look like that picture that I look at every day in the mirror, right? You don't want to grow 20 years from now and find out where we have not been able to bring about the change and take advantage of the affordances of the digital environment. So I think we can do it.
Industries exist because of their structure. The fast food industry, the rental car industry, the airline industry that many of us are about to experience again. Whatever it is, industries exist, and the flow of money from the ultimate consumer to those who are involved along the way and those who produced maybe up front, they exist because of a structure. Barriers to entry, threat of substitutes, buyer power, supplier power, intensity of rivalry. If you want to fix this, if we want a better future, we need to work on solving the root causes of the structure of this thing right now and work to get to the structure we want it to be if we want a sustainable change over time.
I think that one of the major challenges right now is not using the digital nature of things to simply just maintain the status quo. I think the digital nature of things, the internet, the distribution that we see every day that's changing in front of us is really makes this particular area ripe for disruption. And I think that we need to just keep an open mind as we go forward with students first. Really, I think I think that needs to be the focus. And as we find new ways to leverage digital technologies to really put students first, I think that we need to set aside all other reasons, make everything else secondary, and expect disruption, because it's happening everywhere else, and I don't expect that the status quo will be maintained in any one particular area where we see so much of the rest of digital industries being disrupted.
I'm going to be only half facetious. I think we should be careful what we wish for. And I think the issue of textbook affordability pales in comparison to what's happening in the whole higher education industry, if you want to call it an industry, or the effort that goes into the higher education process in this country. And I think we are really looking at a reduction in faculty autonomy. I think we are looking at a whole class of faculty who don't have security of employment. I think there's a move towards centralization of decision making, and I think we should be careful what we wish for. And I think the textbook discussion, the digital resource discussion is a part of that.
Earlier, the question was posed about the future of publishing and what their role might play. I'm a little concerned about the future of our colleges. When we see developments occurring like MITx, you've read about this new effort, and the rise of alternative credentialing that's going on. I don't think that institutions, particularly four-year institutions, those with a residential experience, are as threatened by this new development. But I'm worried for community colleges. I'm worried for our colleges who offer more of a commodity type of experience. We're really focused on delivering the learning to students. If this movement starts to gain steam and we're trying to hold on to faculty autonomy and we don't move toward business models that make us sustainable, then I think we're going to be out of business.
Well, on that cheery note, I would like to, on behalf of the Florida Distance Learning Consortium, thank our panelists. Let's give them a big warm applause.